now we're trying to make the highest quality wine, and we're willing to take a little bit of a loss. And so now everything becomes in-house. Do you see that scenario happening with growers transitioning to winemakers? Do they think about harvest day a little differently?
Absolutely. But in my experience, it's not that radical of a shift. There is, I think of the way you described it is risk. It's risk management. Every day longer that your grapes are on the vine, you're taking on a risk of birds that could come and eat, weather events, heat, rains, pests. And so you have to be thinking about where do you want to go? And where you want to go is thinking about the ultimate wine quality. What do you want your wine to taste like? And let that help drive your decisions of when to pick. But you have to have a very honest conversation at home or with yourself about how much risk you're willing to take, because it is a bit of a compromise. And I can give you an example. There at CV, where I am, we have it's probably like 20 Sauvignon Blanc vines just interplanted with the Cabernet Sauvignon. These are just weird nursery issues. And we haven't top grafted them over because I make this a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc for the Vineyard team and they like it. But these grapes, which we just picked the other day, they're ripening and I want them to get a little bit riper, but the birds are coming and the birds are eating them. And so as we're tasting the wine, I often get the question of like, well, why don't we just make it a little bit riper? People want a little bit riper style. But the problem is if I hang those grapes longer, the birds are going to eat them. So this wine it's not commercial, so it's not a big deal, but this wine is a compromise because we could either pick it and make this lighter style of Sauvignon Blanc, or we could hang the grapes for a riper style, but we wouldn't have any wine. There's no grapes left. So it's okay to compromise. There is going to be a compromise, but I think the key is just to think, if you're a grape grower and now you're a winemaker, wear both of those hats and be thinking, what do I want to make? And it's okay to have a compromise between yield and quality. Like that's just the honest truth of anyone's situation.
What scenarios could play out for the grower, and what really do they need to do in-house versus out-of-house for their startup?
In-house, I think everyone should have the ability to measure Brix, pH, and TA. And you can do that you probably do it for less than $500. Buy that equipment. It's not that hard to use. I even have a video on my YouTube channel, which is just Inside Winemaking, on how to measure TA. And it's equipment you could buy for less than $150. pH probe, that's just something you have to buy off the shelf. Not too hard to use. Brix, you can buy hydrometers for cheap. You can buy a densitometer for $3,500. So, there's some different levels of cost and CapEx there. The hard one are things like the nitrogens, measuring YAN, the yeast assimilable nitrogen. And this is important because this helps understanding how much nitrogen is in your juice, then informs your decision of how much nitrogen, if any, you need to add as a winemaker to help the yeast complete fermentation. And super important to complete fermentation. I mean complete meaning going all the way dry. You don't want to get almost all the way there because then that's a stuck fermentation and you're going to lose your wine to volatile acidity when the bacteria take over. There's some equipment you can buy to measure nitrogens, but it's going to be in the thousands of dollars. And honestly, it doesn't make sense for a lot of people to use it a couple times a year, during harvest, if they're not making a lot of wine. It's kind of an overinvestment. And so sending juice samples out to labs is ideal, but it comes with the real hurdle of you're sending juice out and you're on the clock. If that juice sample doesn't get to the lab within 30 hours, 24, 48 hours max, that it's going to start to ferment. And then your nitrogen is going to be metabolized by the yeast. And so you're not going to get an actual valid, measurement of where the nitrogen started. So this is difficult, especially for people that don't live in, I've heard you talking about viticultural deserts, right? And so for
Yeah,
me, it's this similar, and like people can be in winemaking deserts, which means they're not close to an enological lab. I
right.
think your suggestions are key. If you can, go to a local winery and have them run it for you, pay them for the analysis, bring them beer, champagne, whatever you got to do, it's totally worth it because those are some pretty spendy pieces of equipment that they're going to be using, and it's tedious, and there's some knowledge to being able to do it. So you're going to have to pay for that. Now, a lot of people just aren't going to do that. I work with a lot of people that just aren't going to measure nitrogen. And while it's not ideal, it's okay. There are certain parameters where you can sort of, it's kind of like recipe winemaking, where you can add just stock amounts of nitrogen and you add those in with nutrients. These are things like superfood, Fermaid K, Fermaid O, and then your ammonias, which is DAP, diammonium phosphate, or thiazote. Different suppliers have different names for these things. But you can add kind of maybe 100 or 150 ppm worth of nitrogen without measuring, and in most cases be just fine.
So a lot of times I see the wineries that I work with, they're frantically bottling to empty their tanks before harvest so that they have their tanks available for harvest. So what is that coinciding with the vineyard? That's what we have to think about. So I think the grower might benefit from hearing kind of what they're doing, not just at crush, but what are they going to be doing in the winery to prepare for the next cycle, the next season? And how do they fit that in? Where does that fit in with their vineyard management? Where's the downtime? How do they balance it?
Winemaking is very seasonal. Yeah, I have this obvious high point at harvest where it's all go. It's 7 days a week, depending on your situation. And then it really tapers off. Once the wines are in barrel, once stations are in finish and you just start that aging process, there's really a lot of pressure taken off. You don't need to do anything to the wines on a daily or sometimes even weekly basis. You can top your barrels once a month and be just fine. So after January in the Northern Hemisphere, you need to be thinking about things like topping and racking if that's part of your program. Certain varieties need more racking than others, and overall racking has become historically was very important. It was very culturally part of winemaking. I think less and less so with what modern winemaking. So there's a little bit of pressure off the necessary labor. And then you have to, bottling is something that you can put in the year kind of when it works for you. But bottling is pretty intense. It's the other, I would consider it the other like high point, high intensity part of that cycle, that season. And so when you bottle wines, depends on the wines and in your situation, but it's a real effort. It's pretty intense. And so I always say you just got to look at your schedule and see when it works for your wines. Either, if you have a bottling equipment at your own place, you can be more flexible. If you are reliant on a mobile bottling line coming in, you're going to schedule that months in advance.
So I'd love for you to have a chance to talk about what you do and maybe mention some other resources out there that you think have really helped you along the way and help some of your students who you've helped in the process. What are some resources? You can start with your own and maybe some others.
Resources. I'm a huge fan of winemaking resources. That is really what I am trying to build with Inside Winemaking. And so let's start and we'll just move up the financial ladder. So free is podcasts. I've got 204 episodes of Inside Winemaking that anyone can find anywhere you get podcasts. But those are free. That's a great resource. That's going to take time, right? Because these are hour-long episodes and there's 204 of them. So that's quite a bit of time. But, these are for people driving tractors and commuting and working out and all of that. Then the next level up is I do 1-day classes. I teach these at CV Vineyard in Napa. It's usually about $300 for a day-long class. These are small classes. I cap them at 10 people. We are walking into the vineyard. We're in the winery. We're doing some blending. Like there's some real hands-on stuff here. We are doing some of the analysis in the laboratory. So I offer those kind of throughout the year. And all this information is on my website, insidewinemaking.com. So you can find all the resources there. Next is there's a video course put together by Clark Smith, who's another winemaker here, winemaker and author in California. And he put together a video course called Fundamentals of Winemaking Made Easy, 18 different modules. I had always sort of thought I was going to put together a video course for my audience. And then I found Clark's and I was like, this is it. He's done what I wanted to build. He did it better than I was going to do it. So I've partnered with him. And so I'm promoting that. So that's, again, in terms of money, that's not a whole lot of money, because in the next levels, you go to things like the UC Davis extension certificate course, which is 10 grand. Honestly, I get a lot of people asking me about this. I don't have a strong recommendation for that. It's very university. It's very didactic. Yes, you will learn a lot of enology, but it takes a couple years, and I think they're charging way too much money.